kind of taken a slightly different direction because I'm still not completely done the whole thing that we were looking on. And I wasn't sure, you never know what the attendance is going to be like, so I didn't want to come off like I was shooting arrows at anything. So I thought I'd kind of do a little shift here on why we're studying what we're studying. We've sort of jumped off the theological deep end a little bit, looking at some of these things. We're looking at how we got the Bible, basically, and how these texts that we found have become, I guess, for lack of a better word, approved and in the Bible that we have today. And I think one of the reasons, I think it's very valuable to look at that, but I think at the heart we need to remember all of this is to make us a disciple. So I guess what I'm looking at today is are you a disciple of Jesus? We look at Matthew 28, verses 18 through 20. And Jesus came and spoke to them, saying, "All authority has been given to me in heaven and on earth. Go therefore and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, teaching them to observe all things that I've commanded you. And lo, I'm with you always, even unto the end of the age. Amen." So our ultimate goal is to be disciples and to make disciples. So go therefore and make disciples of all nations, and that's the goal of evangelizing the world for Christ. Any thoughts or comments as we press on through that? I just don't want us to lose sight, because it's interesting to look at how we got that. But at the end of the day, the reason we're learning this is so that we can go out and better evangelize Christ to people, because this study that we're doing for Sunday morning may help us answer some questions that we might get. But I always want to keep at the heart that our job is to be a disciple and to make other disciples. I love George, who came and visited us from Benin. His Sunday lesson, if you weren't there, was basically on discipleship, and it's a fascinating study to get his perspective on it, because he is in the heart of a mission field. Not that we're not. We're in a target-rich environment. We are surrounded, but he is at a place in French-speaking Africa where Islam is pushing down and Christianity is here, and he is in that borderland. And the older term would have been the hinterlands. It's a wild frontier where these two forces come together, and he's actively trying to make disciples there. So it's very near and dear to his heart. So anyway, that's it's important to think about that. So are you a disciple of Jesus? Perhaps you believe in Jesus. I would hope, we're here. I would hope that there is a belief in Jesus. You might even regularly attend church services. But is that what it means to be a disciple of Jesus? I've heard folks say that even the devil believes in Jesus, and we know that Satan is not a disciple of Jesus. So it's and this study, one of the reasons I chose to do this is one of the studies that I've really been working on. It's something I'm trying to be better at. So anytime I typically get before an audience of any size, it's usually something I've been working on for me. So what does it mean, before we get into it, open everything up, what does it mean to be a disciple of Jesus? If you hear somebody say that, are you a disciple of Jesus? This is where you guys get to talk, because I'm boring.
Well, I think ultimately a follower, but at the same time you got to ask another question: is what are you following? And there's so many different organizations or denominations, I guess you could call them, that claim to be followers of Christ, but what they preach and what they practice are twisted versions of how they want to and choose to interpret the scriptures. So I think ultimately, I remember a class here years ago, Jim Bowen, I think, was teaching and saying, can you trace back what you do today as what we read about in the New Testament church? And so I think if you're a follower of Christ, your ultimate question is, can I trace it back to what I read about in my New Testament? And there's my summary.
Yeah, fantastic point. Yeah, absolutely. Anybody else? So It's a serious game. I mean, this is the eternal direction of our soul that's at stake here. So the whole point of this is to make clear as clear as I can as what's involved in being a true disciple of Jesus. So let's start with the definition of disciple. Literally means learner, a learner. It denotes one who follows another's teachings. That's from one of the Vine's publications. The disciple was not only a learner, but is also an adherent. And for this reason, disciples were spoken of as imitators of their teachers. For those of us who've gone through military training, to some degree, you can trace back the type of soldier, sailor, airman, marine, Coast Guardsman. You can trace that back to sort of how your drill instructors were, to some degree. Would you say that in your Marine career, would you say that a lot of how you acted was directly related to how your DIs taught you?
Yeah. I think
even stuff that comes out of your mouth, right?
Yeah. It's one of those things. When I think about disciple, it's kind of like, what does it mean to be put in disciple, and we try to. I think it's one of those things where we try to fit the definition to ourselves. It's easy to fit that definition to me. If I was going to look at and be like, what does it mean to be a member of whatever organization? What does it mean to be a Marine, or what does it mean to be? I like football. What does it mean to be a football player on this team, right? And would I criticize that person for the way that they act and the kind of teammate that I can see that they are from the outside, just looking in? I can tell about that. Well, how am I acting, right? If somebody's on the outside looking in, criticizing me, they may have a good reason to. And sometimes there's an ideal, and we're not going to be perfect and live up to that ideal. But are we trying? I kind of think about that, and then you're right in a lot of ways. You can trace roots back to the very beginning, and sometimes that's good and bad, and that's why we just kind of need to always reevaluate ourselves in comparison with the ideal, right? Which is Jesus.
The standard.
Yeah, there is a standard for us to follow, and there are some things. I learned pretty quickly, like, okay, this stuff over here doesn't matter at all, right? In my Marine Corps career, because I could tell that it did not matter to anyone who was in charge of me. So I go, okay, well, this doesn't matter. You don't think this is real,
core value, right?
Right. This doesn't really actually matter right here, because I can see the way that you act and the way that you interact with other people. So you really don't care about this unless you can use it to attack somebody else. And so, but is that right? No, that would be wrong, but like, we have an ideal in that situation that a literal guidebook for Marines, right? That I can look at and be like, okay, I should not be acting this way because he is acting this way. I should act this way because that's what I signed up to do, and this is what the book says, right? Let's just you should be honest with yourself. Well, we got to kind of do the same thing with the Bible, right? And look at Jesus' life and be like, okay, I understand that maybe this person doesn't value that as much, but what did Jesus actually think about it? And don't allow comparisons with other people to drive our discipleship.
It's a wonderful tool of the devil, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
It really is.
Exactly. Because your sin is never as bad as somebody else's sin. It just isn't, right? It can't be.
Nope, that's right. Tyler, do you have something?
Well, I just think a phrase that sometimes gets thrown around. You don't just believe in it, but you're also drinking the Kool-Aid. It's more than just, hey, I understand what this happened and I believe that, but it's not just you believe it, but you're fully invested in acting upon it, and that's the way that life goes through for you. It's not just oh yeah, I believe that. You could even, I guess I thought about political parties. It's like, yeah, I can believe that these people believe this way, but do I act that way? Oh, yes or no. So you can just kind of go along that route. Just because you believe it doesn't mean that you're fully invested in the way that you present yourself based on it.
Yeah, we've said frequently, and it's something that I truly in my heart believe in this Christian walk, is this is not what we do, but this is who we are. And the thing I guess I've gotten is particularly since Liberty Grace has been here, why do I believe what I believe? I'm constantly going back to that, because I think if I'm asking, why do I believe what I believe, it makes me spend more time here to see what these core values are and what these core tenets are that drive us to do this. So, anybody else?
Well, in a world today where we're defining ourselves by what we believe in. I mean, it just seems like that's coming up more and more frequently. Hi, I'm blah, 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 and I am this. Like that's supposed to explain who you are. I feel like as Christians, we've gotten away from that sometimes, and that we're trying not to step on anybody's toes. And some ways we've become less militant about it, and we need to just, hey, I'm blah, blah, and I am a Christian. And then, well, what does that have to do with it? Well, you told me you were like this. I'm explaining. That explains a lot about who you are. You're a disciple of insert, group here. I'm a Christian, so I'm a disciple of Christ. This is what I believe.
Irrespective of who sits in the White House and what goes on here, we have a king.
Right.
I mean, that's the driving factor. Good point. And I think along those lines too, we think of Jesus being meek, but meek does not mean weak. We should always stand fast in the faith, and we should always be about our Father's business. Anybody else before we go on?
I was just thinking, disciple, the idea of, listener, learner, right? But obviously James says that you have to be a doer of the word, not a hearer only. But we also, I know people who believe and don't act. I know people who believe and try to convince themselves otherwise because they don't want to have to actually act on what has been commanded.
Yeah.
And I looked at them and been like, I know what you know. I know you believe, right? And but you don't want what comes with that belief. The next step, like the inherent what now, right? There is a response that's necessary, and it is easier to find something to be able to tell yourself, well, okay, then this isn't true, even though you know it to be true, right?
Yeah.
And so you can be a believer even, without necessarily being a disciple. I also think we don't think about the word disciple just because it's been hijacked by many other groups and they use it in a incoherent or incorrect way.
I've even heard I've heard sales organizations say, I want my customers to be disciples of what I do.
Yeah.
I've actually heard that in corporate meetings.
Mm-hmm.
And
you do, right? In business you do, right?
But it's this decision to follow Christ is weighty. There's a lot that goes with it. It changes lives. If you're truly trying to be a disciple of Christ, it's a life changer. And it doesn't end with the Duncan. It starts with that, and then that's when your walk keeps moving forward. So anyway, excellent discussion. I appreciate that, because if I have to stand up here for 45 minutes, I'm bored to stinking tears. So I'm just electrifying. Anyway, let's see. So the goal of a disciple, as stated by Jesus himself, is to be like his or her teacher. So Luke 6:40, a disciple is not above his teacher, but everyone who is perfectly trained will be like his teacher. So we should be, that's like Ryan was saying, that our goal is that standard. We should be like our teacher, and ultimately, the ultimate teacher through all this is Christ. To be a disciple of Jesus then is to strive to be like him, and it coincides with God's goal in the redemption of mankind. In that we shouldn't be conformed to the world, but rather we should be conformed to the image of his Son. Look really quickly at Romans 8, 28 and 29. And we know that all things work together for good to those who love God, and those who are called according to his purpose. For whom he foreknew, he also predestined to be conformed to the image of his Son, that he might be the firstborn among many brethren. So, we're to be conformed into the image of Jesus. Talk about waiting. The only perfect being to ever walk this very nasty earth. He could have called for the destruction, but chose to willingly give himself up. So that's the image that we need to be made into. One of the questions that I kind of have, some questions as we go through here, are you trying to follow Jesus and become like him? So unless you do, it cannot be said that you're his disciple. Because Jesus gave us some identifying marks that help us further identify as a true disciple. So the marks of discipleship. And before we get into this, I'll kind of open that up. So what are some, just off the cuff, what are some of the marks of somebody who's a true disciple of Jesus?
Obedience.
Yeah. We don't like that as a society, do we? You see it in children, right? Children don't necessarily don't always want to be obedient. We're trying not to say no to her when she does something, but we're trying to say stop, because I don't want to hear no later all the time. Stop. So she's even got a little streak. She's going to be strong-willed, I'm afraid. Don't know where she gets that. So obedience, excellent. What are some other marks?
Love.
Love? That's harder than it sounds, isn't it? Yeah. What else? What are some other marks that we see of discipleship?
Faith.
Faith. Okay. That's hard, because we have to know that we're doing this not necessarily for the here and now, because it can stink here and now. But we're doing this for better things to come. Yeah, excellent.
Patience.
I hate that word.
Yeah.
Hate patience.
Mm-hmm.
My supportive wife. Yeah. Anything else we can kind of think of? How about multiplication? Making more disciples. Because if you got a really good team, you want to make a bigger team, because you think about the power of one of us in a group. We can work okay. But there's about 250 of us that meet here, and I think if we consolidated and we worked really hard as a team, and we had unity, and we had faith, and we had love, and we had patience, 250 people can conquer a large area. I've seen special forces teams from when I was op for those folks. I was a professional punching bag for a couple of years. I've seen a 12-man team. Have heard of a 12-man team taking out 300 and 400 people, because they were unified and they were trained and they had faith in the mission that they were doing. So there's 250 of us here. You think about the outreach we can have. It's a spider web. We can start from one, and it goes out. And sorry about the military stuff, but that's part of who I am. Thoughts, comments, and
I saw something on Twitter this week where somebody was like, I can't remember, they said it got shared by somebody else, and so I saw it, but they were like, so-and-so, whoever it was, has this many followers, but just think we could be, if everyone who is a follower got one more follower, could have this many followers, right? I was just annoyed at the follow me, look at me kind of aspect of the whole thing, but I thought about that, and I was like, interesting, argument right there. If everyone just got one person, then this is the number we'd be at.
We'd double.
Yeah, exactly. But that's an interesting thought, right? What would we, what kind of good problems would we have if we doubled? What kind of great problems? Oh man,
I have to finish the balcony out.
Exactly, got to finish the balcony. We're gonna have to, redo
Maybe
the parking lot.
Respace the pews a little
Oh
bit.
man,
We have more food at the fellowship.
Exactly, Oh no.
My ever-expanding waistline, thank you for that.
Exactly. So, but I was like,
work on this now.
yeah, I was like, how long does it take to just hit retweet or like on Twitter, right? Not very long at all, right? But okay, even if we say it takes 10 times more than that to just, like you talked about a couple weeks ago, just ask somebody, just invite somebody, because there is a good chance they will say yes. So that's what I was thinking about earlier this week. I was like, that's one of those things. And also another mark of a disciple, I think that this is one I definitely struggle with, is hospitality. You have the obedience and the faith, the love, right? But sharing that with somebody else, that's definitely what I struggle with. It's like, on my own, all right, I'm doing pretty well, but like, are we multiplying, and how do we get those opportunities?
You have to be.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, look at what Jesus did.
I've heard more folks say that growth comes when you step outside your comfort zone and being around a lot of other people.
Yeah.
Outside my comfort zone.
I can step outside my comfort zone to, read this material and go, okay, I need to learn this new topic, but step outside of my comfort zone to go and talk to a new person or invite a new person, that's different, but that's much more important and much more specific to what we're doing.
You think about the cold calling ratio. I believe it's around 1 in 10 that will actually get something that progresses further. So if you do that, even once or twice a week, there's a chance if you invite somebody once or twice a week throughout the year, you'll have at least 1 or 2 visitors that'll come. It's a good chance of that.
And this don't even cost any money.
No, exactly. Exactly. Michael, do you have something?
Okay.
All right. So marks of discipleship. I think one of the first things that I came up with here is we abide in Jesus' word. We have to note what Jesus said to those who believed in him. We'll look at John 8, verse 31. And then Jesus said to the Jews who believed in him, "If you abide in me, in my word, you are my disciple indeed, and you shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free." I think about the liberty that comes from being in Christ. If you truly abide in the words of Jesus and you believe what Jesus told his disciples here, the truth shall make you free. I mean, that makes you fearless of death, because ultimately, when this life is over, we get gathered with our people, and by our people, our brothers, sisters, whoever is on the other side. For the first time in my adult life, I sort of fear death now, because I got this little responsibility that I want to train right. But I want to make sure that I get her on the path to where when I go to my final reward, that we can all be gathered together again. So just a thought on that. It would also imply being diligent. It would also imply being a diligent student of the teachings of Christ. How do we do that? We spend time in God's Word. We have to spend time studying. You think about the effort that we put into social media, into binge watching Netflix, into researching hobbies. And I'm not saying this to you guys. This is to me, because all those things that I've hit, those are all me. You think about the endless hours every day that you spend doing that. Is that going to be beneficial? Is that going to be as beneficial if you spent a third of that time in God's Word? It doesn't take long. You can read through the entire Bible in, really, in a couple months pretty easily. It takes some dedication, but you can actually do that fairly quickly. Even in a year, it doesn't. If you read through it in a year, you're only reading maybe 10 minutes at a time, maybe. So we have to be diligent in studying God's Word. Matthew 7:21 through 27. We'll start into that, because this is a good reminder. "Not everyone who says to me, 'Lord, Lord,' shall enter into the kingdom of heaven, but he who does the will of my Father in heaven. Many will say to me in that day, 'Lord, Lord, have we not prophesied in your name, cast out demons in your names, and done many wonders in your name?' And I will declare to them, 'I never knew you. Depart from me, you who practice lawlessness.' Therefore, whoever hears these sayings of mine and does them, I will liken them to a wise man who built his house on the rock. And the rains descended, and the floods came up, and the winds blew and beat on the house, and it did not fall, for it was founded on the rock. But everyone who hears these sayings of mine and does not do them will be like the foolish man who built his house on the sand. And the rain descended, and the floods came, and the winds blew, and it beat on the house, and it fell, and great was its fall." Like Ryan said earlier, we have to be doers of the Word. we have to build our life on the rock. What kind of house are we building? Are we building this house that just gets thrown up quickly with no strong foundation, and this foundation being the Word of God? Are we saying, "Hooray, Jesus! I'm a Christian now. And that's all I got to worry about"? Because if that's the case, then we're going to be like the foolish man on the sand. Yeah, you can say I'm building my house on Jesus, but if you're not spending time in His Word and knowing what's been taught, then your foundation's going to be weak, and the first bit of tempest that blows your way, your faith's going to crumble. You said faith's important. If you don't build that foundation right, you have problems. Any thoughts or comments before we kind of press ahead?
Yeah, I got a few things.
Please.
You know, like Tyler said, we announce ourselves and say, well, I'm Eric, and I'm a recovering addict, and also now a recovering Christian. Because
Interesting way to put it, by the way.
I have stepped out of line and went, sided with the devil a lot as I was growing up. I was brought up in Maysville Church of Christ as a young kid. My family, my mom always come here, not necessarily this building, but there's been several buildings. If in my come up and my fall apart too, if I can't reach down and help somebody come up with me, my discipleship's worthless. It's been a struggle. I'm glad I'm at where I'm at now. But like I said, if I can't bring somebody with me, what kind of disciple am I?
Yeah.
I could do and say a lot of things that may somebody not even care about, but the struggle of getting out of addiction and active addiction is also the same struggle in everyday life. There's a active use, there's a decision to use, there's and also it's a decision of what you're going to do today. In my life and in my daily choices, there's choices to do everything, to be good or to be just worthless, to go to work or to stay home and do nothing. That's my choice. And just like being here and following God, that's a choice. You don't have to be here. You don't have to follow God. There's many other things that you can go do.
A lot of them easier too, aren't they?
Oh, some same as that, But as far as my situation, I never realized of how many people was watching me. Now that I'm doing good and trying to get my life back together, some of the people that have been watching me are like, "Wow, you're doing so good," and just never forget that. Just reach back and pick somebody up. It's not that hard. Let's see. I think it was Underwood, Ernest Underwood, I think. He was the preacher before Tim, I believe. And he preached a sermon, and he had somebody come up and him at the pulpit, and he said it's much easier for somebody to come and pull me down than it is for me to go and lift them up here with me. And that's along with that discipleship, that's an awesome demonstration of what you're talking about.
Well, and that actually perfectly goes into to the next point, which is you have to love the brethren. You have to love people.
Yeah.
Love is one of those things that allows you to do that. You have to consider what Jesus did for his followers. He lifted those people out of despair and out of a hopeless situation. But embrace my dad died with almost 14 years of sobriety. I'm very, as an adult child of an alcoholic, I'm very aware of the addiction recovery process.
It's hard. It's
And I'm going to encourage you to keep pressing, and I will encourage you. You got a skill set now that you can help other people with.
Yeah.
Don't ever lose sight of that. You may feel really bad about that, but you can help a lot of people because not a lot of us have dealt with that.
Right.
But I'll be praying for you, brother. I'm proud of you.
Thank you.
So, love the brethren. Consider what Jesus said to his followers, John 13. And we're going to go John 13, and we're going to be looking at verses 20, bifocal problems, 34 through 35. So, a new commandment I give you is to love one another as I have loved you, that you also love one another. By this all will know that you are my disciples, if you have love for one another. It's hard. I mean, we've talked in here. It's hard to love your fellow man sometimes. We're not a lovable lot. We're mean-spirited. I think particularly now, as social media has developed to where it is, I see exchanges through various social media types. People just mean and ugly to each other. I mean, I see people just one word comment, idiot. You go back 10 years ago. Would you have gone up to somebody and go, idiot? Would you have done that? No, somebody would have knocked your teeth out. I mean, but at the end of the day, it's led us to where we don't have. I think it's impeded the way we love our fellow man, just to some degree, with a love patterned after the love of Jesus, as I have loved you. And it should be a love that's visible by the world. By this, all will know. And I'm going to drill down outside of the world, but we can look inside the brotherhood. We need to love one another. If we're in this building together, we should be family. We should love one another, even though if you're the weird uncle, we should still love the weird uncle. If you're the one that's maybe not lovable, you should still love them. Because we're called by this, all will know that you are my disciples. He's talking to his followers. Love one another and the world will know what you're about. Thoughts or comments as we press ahead there. So, marks of discipleship. Abide in Jesus' words. Love the brethren. And then bear much fruit. It's one of the other places that we need to be able to see discipleship. We've talked in this class before about how we outsource a lot. As a body of believers, we outsource a lot. We have, I think, our mission budget's in excess of $500,000. We outsource a lot of mission work. But like Ryan was saying, if one person did one, you think about taking some ownership of that. It's an explosion. We could bring one person with us. So bearing much fruit is an outward sign. John 15:8. By this my Father is glorified, that you bear much fruit, so you will be my disciples. We need to be about our Father's business. And let's look real quick here. And go up in the same chapter in John 15. I'm the vine, you're the branches. He who abides in me and I in him bears much fruit. Without me, you can do nothing. It's all about bearing fruit. We need to be active, trying to make more disciples. We need to be lifting people up. Because without this, they're lost. We need to be about that business. Failure to bear much fruit. In verses 1 and 2 of John 15. Every branch in him that does not bear fruit, he takes away. Every branch that bears fruit, he prunes that it may bear more fruit. It's a hard question to ask. Are we bearing fruit? It's really easy to get caught up in family stuff. It's really easy to get caught up in work stuff. It's really easy to just get caught up in the moment. And I'm, with the young child now, I'm all about being in the moment because you need to enjoy that. But we also need to be about greater things. So we need to be about that. To be a disciple of Jesus means more than just a casual church member. Requires commitment, especially in regards to teaching, to the teachings of Christ, to the love of the brethren and bearing fruit. The commitment involved is steep. And kind of the next direction we were looking at is the cost of discipleship. Any thoughts or comments on where we are at this point?
God don't matter if you're white, black, green, purple, a drug addict, a abusive person. You can change. And back on my recovering from my addiction, drugs don't care either. They'll pick you up if you're down and out. They'll pick you up if you're rich and wealthy. There's no boundaries. God's good. I see that more and more every day. But just never think that you're too good for anything, because it'll get you, and God will get you too.
And it takes that, but it takes effort to either good or bad.
Either
It takes
way,
effort.
it takes an effort. You got
But
to
you
make
said
a
earlier,
choice.
you make a choice. That's
Yes,
right.
sir.
So there's some cost to discipleship. Before we get into this, what are some costs that could be associated with being a disciple?
Lose friends.
Yeah.
Lose family.
You lose a job.
You lose your life.
These are all very real, aren't they? Is that comfortable to think about losing friends, family, job, life? Is that a comforting thought to anybody at all? It's by choice. You make a choice that if your foundation is that you believe the teachings of Jesus and you believe what's written here, knowing that there's a cost associated with you, still do it. It takes faith. It takes effort and it takes work. Real quick, just before I'll get through my last 3 points. I've got verses with this if you want them. Cost of discipleship: Jesus must come first. We must be willing to suffer for Jesus, and we must forsake everything to follow Jesus. I got more, but we ran out of time. For those of you with children who might have an opportunity to go to the bathroom by yourself, take it. Thank y'all for everything.